Hey everyone, it's John. The Bop Squad just wanted to let all of you know how much we appreciate you listening to the podcast. Hopefully you are getting a lot of new intriguing ideas and some inspiration and just good content from our podcast. If you like what you're hearing, please consider supporting us on Patreon. There are different levels, whether that's a one-time gift or a monthly contribution. And the different levels have different perks associated with them, like early released episodes or some merchandise. Speaking of, you can go over to the Bop Shop at clinicalpopulations.threadless.com to check out some of our merch, which also is a way for you to support us. I own 2 of our shirts, and they are my favorite shirts out of my wardrobe. They are so comfortable and soft and stylish, if I do say so myself. So consider checking out some of our merch. It really is good quality stuff. All right, now to the show.
Clinical. Clinical. Clinical.
Population. Population.
Clinical.
Population. Population.
Clinical.
Population.
Hello, everybody. My name's Gabby.
I'm Allison.
I'm John.
I'm Grant.
And welcome to Clinical
Populations.
Introducing music therapists to new bops and new bops to music therapy.
And today we have Lo. Woo.
Welcome.
Welcome back.
Good to be back. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're super excited to catch up with you after, I think it's been 2 years.
2 years, yeah.
Yeah.
Because that was May 2019.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. I feel like this past year doesn't count. So it's 1 year.
Right?
I was about to say, basically nothing's happened since then. So
Yeah. Basically.
Nothing.
Basically.
To toss out.
Yeah. Yeah. We're doing it over. We're doing it over.
So it's only been 1 year.
Yes.
Exactly.
Okay, we're getting our timeline. Yeah, so I guess just have you been? What have you been up to over the past year and throughout year?
It's been a roller coaster. I know it has for like a lot of people, like trying to like deal with, depression and anxiety that definitely was exacerbated because of the pandemonium.
The Panini Press?
The Panini Press, the Pandemi Lovato. It was, no shade, I love Demi, but it just flows off the tongue. Pandemi Lovato. But nah, just trying to figure stuff out and trying to turn back to music for, a form of catharsis and an outlet, and really honed in on my production skills. And feel like that's been another tool to be able to articulate how I'm feeling, what I'm trying to get, like, into the song, bring it into the tangible form and out of my brain. So yeah.
How have you been going about the learning more production stuff and getting more into it?
It's a lot of trial and error. Okay. So like I'll think of something that I want to happen in a certain part or a chord progression, and then I'll go through, and there's a lot of clicking through sounds and seeing, which ones speak to me and feel like they're cohesive with the rest of the track. And sometimes I have to go to YouTube University and figure out how to do certain things, like an automation, or like I'm starting to kind of touch on mixing. And that's just a whole nother frontier, but it helps to define certain sounds more. Like this record's going to have a lot of bass a lot of more aggressive tones. Yeah.
Do you have any favorite channels on YouTube for learning techniques and tricks?
Not specifically.
Okay.
Not specifically, but there are so many great people on there who offer their wisdom and tips and tricks. Because a lot of people go to school for this, and I considered it for a while to go to school for music, but I don't know. There's so many resources out there, as well as traditional schooling, and so that's been an amazing resource.
Definitely. Well, speaking of production, you recently released 2 singles, I think.
I did.
Yeah. One of them is called Lost in Translation. And we're very grateful that you're sharing that song with us. And we're really excited to listen to it. So, folks, we're going to listen to it and then we'll start talking about it. So enjoy Lost in Translation by Low.
Oh, that I meant it when I said it, how I was falling in love, counting those seconds till to you, really thought that you were the one. What if it was different? What if I had stayed? What if I just came back? Would that be okay? You could love me, maybe in another life you would've called me, but I was on the other line. And do you miss me like I miss you all the time? Hold on to what we could be. Or was it stuck on us? Go on, let me loose, give back my pieces, give me back all my love. I don't know the difference, kinda like the pain. Love you in my misery, love you anyway. You could love me, maybe in another life you would've called me, but I was on the other line. And do you miss me like I miss you all the time? Hold on to what we could be. Or was it all just in my mind, in my mind, in my mind? Maybe I'm broken, maybe it's just a phase. Maybe I'm hoping that you will feel the same way. Cards on the table, baby, let's run away, run away. Maybe I'm holding on to yesterday. Maybe you were on time, but I was just too late. Now it's too late. You could love me, maybe in another life you would've called me, but I was on the other line. And do you miss me like I miss you all the time? Hold on to what we could be.
And that was Lost in Translation by Low. What did you guys think?
I loved it. Like, I was just totally enamored with like the 80s soundtrack vibe that I started feeling when listening to it. And it just,
Yes.
I just really enjoyed listening to it like on repeat, like nonstop the first time. And I was like, at some point I need to like pay a little bit more attention to like the lyrics the next person we can have the conversation. But I was just vibing with it so much. And I just really enjoyed just the aesthetic of it.
Thank you.
Yeah, that pulsating bass really got me. When it just comes in, it's like do 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 do, and I was like, yes.
Invisible movement.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad you dig it.
Yeah. What I love is like that's all you needed in that point. Like it fits the mood so well. It's so contemplative and simple, and that's all you need. And it draws you in, and then it comes in with the chorus with all the extra texture, and it's just so fun. I love 80s vibes already. 80s music is some of my favorites. So
Me too.
it's perfect.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree with that. I love the simplicity, but also like the layered texture to the song. Yeah, I was trying to like it was taking me back to like several different 80s songs, and it at the same time with kind of the way the bass hits in the chorus and that kind of thing. So I really liked it.
Dig it. But yeah, definitely 80s. Definitely 80s. That was a big part of the inspiration because I love Prince.
There we go. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. There you
That
go.
makes sense.
But yes, making correlation. Cool. Yeah.
Any other influences for that song in particular beyond Prince?
Not really. Not specifically. I definitely pull from a bunch of different places, but Prince is one of my biggest inspirations.
Yeah. One thing that I noticed, the drums and the bass, like the pulsating bass in particular, gives us kind of like a ground, because before that and then like around it, the synth is like, it's a little like murky. Like there's a lot of different sounds and textures happening. So it's kind of like, here are these clear things that are happening, but then there's also this like murkiness kind of, what I thought was like, it kind of represented like the being lost type feel with the murkiness.
I felt the same way, like lost almost in your head, like a cloudiness, like a kind of a cloudy sound, that murkiness, and kind of thinking through all of the things that the lyrics are saying.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I guess I'm a nerd when it comes to imagery. So I'm glad that you guys picked up on that, because I try to implement that throughout my writing, but also now through production. And so when we get up to like the verses, it's supposed to be more minimalistic so that the lyrics stand out more, because they're a little bit more like, they're conversational, but there's some like kind of hidden meanings and things. But then once we get into the chorus, like at least when the hook is happening, like the instrumental hook, it's meant to be, like you said earlier, Allison, contemplative. That's your moment of reflection, like, you know, oh my gosh, like I've experienced this too, or oh my gosh, this girl is so sad, who hurt her, or what's going on? Yeah.
Yeah, but then when you get into the chorus of all these really heavy emotions and just like this, we could have, you could have, you know, the really heavy reflection is where all the other texture comes in, and it really just highlights the importance of those thoughts and the heaviness of those emotions. And it's like, do you miss me? Like, I miss you so much. Like, do you miss me? And it's, you can just feel the pain in that, and almost this like, you know, like when you're trying to let something out, like it's just this release of emotion, and yeah, you can just feel that in the change and the instrumentation there.
Yeah, dude. No, it's very emo.
It's okay.
One of my most emo songs for sure.
I'm down for it. I love it.
I think kind of going forward in the song on the bridge, a lot of the instruments come out, and it's just drums, a little bit like of pads, and then the vocals. And going along with the imagery, it kind of brought to mind when like you just can't hide what you're feeling or what you're trying to say anymore, and like it's just kind of like that pinnacle moment where you're just like, okay, like do I tell this person? Like, should I tell this person? And like, well, I guess I will tell this person, like, I can't hide anymore. You know, there's no more synth to hide behind. Like, here we go.
No synths. Yeah, hiding behind synths. So, no, for sure. I always mean for the bridges to be the most telling part, because it's usually when the instruments are like lessened or at least brought into just specific elements, so that, you know, again, like the lyrics are in the forefront and hit you in the gut, smack you in the face, you know, rip out your heart, whatever the goal is of the theme of the song. But yeah, in this specific one, it was meant to exhibit pain, because a lot of us have felt that, where we've experienced a loss, and you go through the what ifs and the could-haves and live in the proverbial, but you have to let that go and release it.
Yeah. Yeah, I can feel that, especially in the ascending vocal line, and now it's too late. It's like that cry, that release. Like,
yeah,
exactly. I was like, oh, she didn't. It's so good. Yeah, that was my favorite moment. I loved that. I thought that was really well done.
Thank you. That one kind of happened on accident in recording.
Really?
Because I was just trying different things, and I did it. And then they're like, do that again. I'm like,
oh, yeah, it was perfect.
And then I had to.
And then you're like, oh, no, I have to repeat it.
No. It was weird. It was weird, but I'm glad you guys like it.
So I'm curious, what was the creative process, production process like between the two songs that like the two periods of time, I guess, that we've seen you in? So we saw you 2 years ago. And I was just curious, like, how have things changed in your songwriting over 2 years, just besides you feeling more confident in your production style and learning more? Like, what's different now, 2 years later?
That's a good question. I feel like I've become more comfortable with myself to be more revealing, be more vulnerable with my audience, but specifically, like, I don't know, art is kind of selfish in a way, you know? And so for me, this was a release, and I don't know, I had so many things to get out, especially during 2020. I felt a lot of anger. And so that's kind of what this next chapter is geared towards, is being more revealing of that rawness and realness that all of us have felt, and, you know, allowing space for that to exist.
Yeah, you can definitely sense that, just in the way that you structured the song, and the very like blatant lyrics of like, this is what I need to tell you, like, this is how I'm feeling. A little less of the like metaphor and more of like, this is how it is. Yeah.
I'm gonna feel you. Yeah. That was the motive. But it's funny because this song was actually written and recorded and everything before the pandemic.
Oh.
So I was supposed to do a lot with it. I like even went to Chicago and recorded with So Far Sounds
Nice.
Awesome.
It was so cool. They were so nice. They were so nice. There's just something about Chicago. I love Dallas, but when I go to Chicago, I feel so at home. But they were so sweet. And so we had like a lot of plans for it. And then the pandemic happened, and I was just like, I don't feel right releasing this during a time that's so tumultuous and so many people are dying. And I'm like, all right, look at me, like with this song. Like I felt really stupid, and it was so menial and didn't have anything to do with what was going on in the world at that time. So I waited and waited and waited, and I was like, okay, I feel like now is the appropriate time to put this out into the world. And so we did in September, and it felt really good to release music again. It had been almost 2 years at that point.
Wow.
It's a long time.
Yeah.
It's not that I wasn't creating or had things. I just am very much a perfectionist, and since I started doing the production side of things, I just kept deleting stuff or going like, no, we can't, like, this isn't ready. But luckily with this one, I had the help of a couple of other producers to add in on the drums and stuff. Is Grant Thompson, Caleb Thurman, and Austin Bello mixed the record. So that was cool to have some other ears and kind of people going, hey, like, this is good enough. Like, we're going to add a couple more elements to like beef it up, and then you're good to go. And that was encouraging for sure, to have other people being able to push you. Say like, stop self-sabotaging, you perfectionist. And
so relatable. I'm the same way.
It's tough.
Definitely.
Yeah.
No, I really appreciate you sharing that, because as you were talking about like being able to showcase the vulnerability and like really allowing for your anger to be expressed and like held, it just reminds me a lot of one metaphors within like our work as music therapists, but also to just the fact that in general society, we don't ever really, it seems like we shy away from being angry as if it's like a bad thing. And I mean, there's just so much with it. Like, and I think leaving the element of talking about perfectionism, like if you're angry, you're not perfect, like, and how those things all tie together and other like cultural ways in which that also comes into play when you think about things like race, gender, and sexuality and things like that too. And like, it's so important, I think, for us, especially in artistic endeavors, to be able to like allow feelings of anger and rage to also be just as valid and like present and held in that work and expressed and shared throughout. So just, I really appreciate you saying that, sharing that with us.
Thank you. And you bring up a really good point. Like, that's something that I've felt as a woman, and, you know, going through kind of this unlearning of, you know, I'm a human and I have human emotions, and it's right and just for me to express those things, and not hide them just to be more palatable or, you know, acceptable, especially in my industry where it's like, you know, we just want you to like, you know, just sing the song and do the dance and do the thing. And I'm like, no, like I have more substance than just this. And there's a time and place. Like, there's a lot of songs on the record that are more like fun and a little sassy and like just you know, just stuff to vibe to. And there are others that are more pensive and delve into that.
But yeah, no, it's so true in the music industry. I remember the first EP that I released, it was like, oh, these songs are like really emotional and angry and sad, and why aren't you releasing something that's upbeat and happy, you know, put the smile on your face kind of saying. And I was just like, that's not how I was feeling when I released these songs, so why do I have to be happy? Why can't I release a sad album, you know?
No, and I felt a lot of guilt for that too, where especially like during the pandemic and coming out of it with so much loss that, you know, I've been feeling a lot of really heavy things and feeling like I had to be a conduit for joy for people when I wasn't actually happy myself and going through a lot. That was something I had to process through too, and know that other people actually would rather feel like they're not alone in what they're feeling and experiencing versus, you know, you putting on a happy face and pretending.
Yeah, I was actually, this morning I was listening to an interview that Sarah Bareilles did. And yeah, so she was talking about, just how hard it is, or how hard it was and how hard it still is to be a woman in the music industry. And like on the writing side, she was saying how when she was working on her album, she had all these like, you know, great songs on it, but the record company was like, we need you to do all these collabs first and then release like your real stuff. And, you know, just every time she was trying like to release her stuff, they always had one other thing that she had to do before she could release her real stuff. But then she released Brave as kind of like an FU to the to the record. Not Brave. Love Song. Yeah. Sorry, Love Song. Yeah.
That did amazingly.
Yeah.
Yes, it did.
It did so well. And so, yeah, she was just telling that whole story about how that happens. And then she also talked about how when she comes into the studio, she already has demos that like she's produced herself. And like, they're not the most, you know, intricate things, but they have all the ideas and everything that she wants to say and everything she wants to sound there. But she was saying how she felt kind of like the like engineers and producers she was bringing it to weren't taking it seriously, because it's like, leave the production and the engineering to like, you know, the dudes, you know, and it's like she has some great ideas, you know.
I've run into that a little bit, or, you know, how do I put this? There are so many amazing men that I've worked with and that I consider allies in this industry, you know, for women, but there are some dudes specifically, unfortunately, that kind of like belittle what you're trying to do, or have their own idea in mind and try to trump what you're doing, because they're like, well, like I'm more superior in my idea, so I'm going to put this in here whether you like it or not. And then there's the awkward conversation of, hey, like, I just want to do this one thing. And then, you know, you get, you know, called names or treated differently, and it's one of the reasons why I took production in-house too, because I was tired of going into situations like that, and I wanted to have the creative control, but I also long for collaborators that are like-minded, and like, I don't want to do this by myself. Like, I'm all about, you know, the sharing of ideas and working together, and I'm still finding those people.
Nice.
Yeah. It takes a minute.
It does.
It does. Yeah, I feel like I can relate to the production aspect, because I do, or I've started to do a lot of technology things like within music therapy, but also just in general. Like I have started to really enjoy producing and like making beats and just like messing around on like DAWs and stuff like that. And it's funny because all the people that I've learned from, or most of the people that I've learned from, have just like all been guys. And so it's like, where are all the girls that are doing this? you know?
Yeah. That's my question to you. Like, my mentors have also been guys, and
they're great. They're great, you know? Yeah. But where's everyone else?
Yeah. That's the goal. That's the goal, is to try to encourage other women to do this and get involved and teach others as they go along, and provide resource to other women. That's really important.
Yeah, exactly. I was sharing a story before you jumped on low of how like I really wanted to learn Pro Tools. I had taught myself Audacity at like 13 and I really wanted to learn Pro Tools. I was like 14 or 15 and just trying to find someone to teach me, because I had never been around any of that, but just had an interest in, I was already writing my own music. So why not learn how to like record it for myself and actually make it sound good. And so I was sharing with them that like everybody I asked, one, it was all men, and nobody wanted to teach, a 14, 15-year-old Allie, like, why do you need to do that? Just have somebody else do that. And, it's too complicated. So it was just kind of
patience to teach too.
Yeah. So just those kinds of messages. So I'm glad that there's 3 of us on here that are, working to kind of.
We're doing it, guys.
Yeah.
Dismantle.
That's right.
Guys, patriarchy. It's cool. Grant and John, you guys can stay.
Exactly.
That's cool. We'll keep you.
Oh my gosh.
My question would be more so along the lines of like thinking back to the song you shared in 2019 with us, Burning Building, and then Lost in Translation now. Like, and then one of the things that we talked about in terms of like the accompaniment that I felt was really reminiscent in both, like very apparent in both of them, was the minimalism, I guess you could say is what it is, but just how you use so little, but it was perfect. Like, and I feel like that's something that gets really, I feel like that's something that gets really tricky and like also kind of intimidating sometimes when it comes to like, I'm writing a song, either as somebody who wants to write songs just to be a songwriter, or even in like our clinical spaces. But just being able to like know enough is enough and when that is. So I guess I'm just more so curious about like, how do you go about your instrumentation and your arrangement to make sure that like the lyrics are being supported the way that they need to, and that the music is also like how they work together?
It depends. I feel like it kind of goes back more to like my creative process, like how I start the song. Because sometimes it'll start with, a chord progression and a beat, or it'll start with just a line that I think of, and then the lyrics will come first, or melody or whatever. And so it's really dependent on that, because then I build it out accordingly. But I guess with Burning Building, I knew that I wanted it to be more vulnerable and minimalistic because of what I was trying to convey. And so I really wanted it to be, vocal and piano, and then I was going to layer elements of my voice to be able to portray that sorrow that I was feeling. And I actually recorded that one so a week after my grandmother died. So that was really important to me, to be able to capture that moment in my life.
That's kind of interesting, because I, clinically thinking about the song, I worked with older adults and sort of on the end of life spectrum. And so I've thought about, doing a lyric analysis and then rewrite of the song, kind of processing some of the what ifs and some of that unsureness at the helping everything settle after someone passes away. And I know that's not necessarily what the lyrics of the song are speaking to, but I think that the song would be a nice framework to explore that.
Yeah, I was, so I work with adults in mental health, and then also families. And
Gotcha.
we talk about relationships a lot, especially with couples and people who are expecting, or who have just become new parents. But particularly in my mental health groups, we talk about relationships just because it's just a part of our life, and, intimate relationships. And all too often we talk about processing breakups or loved ones, intimate partners that have passed, and the grief process. And some of the things that I was seeing in here are just the grief of going through the grief process of losing someone that you loved. And very similar to what John was sharing with processing and holding space for the what ifs, and just allowing someone to say, like, do they miss me? What if they call me back? What do I do? And then also identifying, like, what are your communication patterns in your relationships? And, do these happen in all of your intimate relationships? And just kind of identifying what's coming up when they have a partner. I feel like this would be a wonderful song. I typically do an intervention where I'll bring in songs talking about relationships and love, and having them identify, what they resonate with in their own intimate relationships. So I thought this would be a good song to add into that, and bring up that topic. So that's where my mind was headed.
I'm glad it's being used for good.
Yeah.
That's such an amazing thing. Wow.
Yeah, if I, when I was working in mental health with adults, I did something similar, Allison, where I brought in songs, and they had to identify what they're hearing, and what's going on in each song. So if I was working in mental health still, I would definitely bring this one in, because it's also it's not like a song you've heard on the radio, right? So there's no association with it yet for most people. So it would make them kind of concentrate on the song a little differently than they would if it was a song that they had heard on the radio or on some sort of playlist. So, yeah.
Yeah, or that they related to a partner. That adds a whole other layer to that.
Yeah, associating a song with a partner. Yeah. Yeah. Where I currently work, kind of going back to the production side of things. So we do a lot of songwriting and producing. So we just make up songs during a session and then try to find, the sounds that'll go with it and record it. And then we have it for us as something that they've created. And so this song, or this week, actually, we created an 80s type song, with the pulsating bass and the chuck, and this was I hadn't even listened to Lost in Translation, so it wasn't even on my brain at the moment, but it just kind of happened because we were trying to explore different loops on Soundtrap. And so we were looking through all the different loops, and I think we went through maybe 15 or 20 of them. And I was like, are we there yet? Have you found something that is there something that has fit the song in? They're like, no, not yet. And so we keep on looking, and finally we hit the pulsating one, and they're like, that's it. That is the one that we need for this song. And it's just kind of like how you were talking about, trying to figure out just what fits a song or what's going to help the song. It's just such a process of exploring and really trying to find what is going to bring the song to where it needs to be. And that can be really difficult sometimes because you just get really frustrated or tired. But when you find it, you find it. And it's just kind of this magical moment when things finally click.
For sure. Because, for me, when I was growing up, I had a really crazy childhood and young adulthood. And so I had, my little boombox in my room, and one of my favorite songs to like reflect on with is Death Cab for Cutie song. I think it was Transcend.
Oh yeah, transatlanticism.
Yeah.
Nice.
But I would come home from school and I would just like lay on the ground and listen to that over and over again. Very, very emo, very emo. But I think that's where that started for me, was realizing that I was using music in a therapeutic way.
Yes. Songs do a really great job of, like, even just listening to them and receiving them, do a really great job of being with us when we need it.
Right. And sometimes like those songs will bring us back to a time. Like I got to see Death Cab for Cutie live when I was like, I think I was 22. And they started to play it and I just like ugly cried. I was trying to hide it. I'm like, people are something's wrong with me. I'm on drugs. I don't know. But it just it brought me back. It was very surreal. Kind of like a re-exposure to that time in my life.
For me, in terms of like clinical stuff, I had a reaction with kind of the theme with the title being lost in translation. And then the line in the chorus, you would have called me, but I was on the other line. And I think it also just kind of goes into some of that Gabby was saying, just like my context and what I've been kind of digesting content wise the past few weeks. But I've been thinking a lot about how there are a lot of folks that we work with that are non-speaking, and the ways in which communication is so diverse, and how we have these multiple missed opportunities for true connection because we tend to privilege just like our speaking communication and even the element too, like of it being a lyrical song, and just like how can we go about being better in our communication understanding of one another. And that can apply to so many different areas too. But I think like hearing the song and then going over the lyrics, and then also to just the content from a lot of autistic creators that I've been just digesting recently, like it really got me thinking about that and reflecting on that a lot. And I'm not sure if it would be more so like a clinical intervention to bring in and just like, this is a music therapy experience, but more so even just a chance to like talk about it more and to like really bring that into the spaces of like our professional spaces and our educational spaces, and to really talk about the importance of how there is a diversity in communication and what it means to really honor that for the folks that we work with, and also with just other people in our world.
Most definitely. Like one of the jobs that I had at the end of college, I worked at an autism clinic that was affiliated with the university, and I worked with kiddos who were nonverbal, and like there was a lot of frustration when they weren't able to communicate what they wanted or needed, and so I totally get that. And I think like it's beautiful because we have technology at our advantage in those kinds of situations where they've learned, on the iPad, as time has gone on, they can, mand for different things by, pressing different buttons and stuff. But I wonder if in those situations where like an individual would get really riled up in their frustration, if they'd be able to, have the skill set to be able to go, hey, like I'm feeling this way. Let me listen to this music to bring me down and calm me.
And I work with a lot of people who have dementia, and so that's also somebody who has a really hard time communicating. The brain, according to what what is affected by the dementia, the communication can be a real challenge. And somebody wanting to get a point across to you but can't get the right words out or something like that, like you were saying, it's very agitating and frustrating, and it's helpful. I think sometimes they have a better time communicating with music and in music, sometimes non-verbally, just playing a drum, getting that frustration out and communicating in that way, because words are failing them. So we can provide another form of communication for our clients and the people we're working with.
That's great.
Yeah, that also brings to mind some of the folks that I work with have acquired brain injuries. And one client in particular I've been working with has aphasia. And so when this person speaks, it's very hard for like the conjunctions and like the right verbs to there's parts of the sentences that don't come together. But when this person is singing, it's just like total 180, like can sing an entire song and like no pauses, right pitches. And it's just so interesting how, just how that works. And then also what I've learned is that like I've grown to know more about him through like his musical things that he does, and he shares a lot of songs with me. Like he's basically communicating like how he's feeling more through songs and like just YouTube videos than he is like actually word wise, because like they hit home more. And it's so cool.
That is really cool. Like I've heard of individuals who have Alzheimer's who like used to play the piano or sing or something, and then they're able to sit down at the piano and have muscle memory to be able to play a song again, or like a song will be turned on and they'll go, oh, like, and it will kind of trigger memories for them and allow them to be lucid. It's really, really powerful what music can do.
Absolutely. It takes them back to a place, I used to dance to this song in dance halls. We get to go and live in that space for a little bit and just enjoy that memory that's attached to that song.
It's incredible.
So I just had like a little thought exercise kind of to go off of the idea that I was talking about a little bit earlier, and just kind of with the line, you would have called me, but I was on the other line. When thinking about that in a clinical space or a clinical setting, who do you think is communicating that? Like, is it coming from like a client perspective, like a participant's perspective, or is it like the therapist facilitator's perspective? Like, in what ways does that change when you think about it from the different people that could be communicating it, or who could be considered like on the other line?
So I was thinking of actually two different things. So one was my experience in the past with nonverbal clients, because right now I'm not working with any nonverbal clients. But as you were kind of bringing up that point and we were discussing it a little bit, I thought of some times where I was missing what they were trying to communicate, and I kind of put myself in my own shoes. So thinking of it from, I guess, the therapist's point of view of like, how did I miss and what did I miss? And, what were those specific signs that these clients were trying to give me? And then thinking about the fact that then I was thinking about it from my point of view, and why was I thinking about it from my point of view instead of like, how could I, and again, speaking about it from my point of view, but like, how could I have supported this or understood this in a different way? And do I need to understand it in a different way, or just allowing that client to communicate in the way that's best for them, not necessarily forcing their boards or their iPads or whatever, just allowing them to be expressive in whatever way that might look like. And sometimes that's not using AAC. Sometimes that's not even using music. Sometimes it's just being in a space with somebody and having nonverbal body language and showing me with their face or with their hands or with their stems, like how they're feeling. And why was I always looking for something that I could understand, whether it was verbal or musical? But then I thought about it from a mental health perspective, because that's where I am now in my career, and thinking about how my clients do communicate to me when I'm missing something and the total difference in that. But of course, it's verbal or musical. And I'm always asking for the feedback. But why did I never ask for feedback when I was working with the other population? So those are just kind of some of my thoughts of like, how can I remove myself and really allow the client to be more in control? Even though I come from a humanistic, client-centered standpoint, how can I do that even more without thinking of myself? Those are my thoughts.
Yeah, because when I was presenting the point, my perspective was, what do we as music therapists miss because of the way in which we're taught, the ways in which we have these like normative like ideas of what is communication, despite the diversity of what communication fully can entail and encompass. And and it does seem like we miss out on a lot and we don't realize it. Or maybe we do realize it and we try to justify it in some way to make us feel better. So we don't like think, oh, we're doing, just to make us feel more comfortable. And yeah, like I was really like resonating with what you were sharing, because I think it's so much harder to just be, because we're taught to just keep doing stuff. And I wonder if we just stopped and literally were just with other people, like how much more connection could actually happen if we were able and willing to just learn another person. And that's it.
And to just sit on the line and not have to talk on the line.
Yeah. And it's funny you say that, because, and I don't know if this is just being further along in my career, finishing up grad school, and just knowing more. But I feel like I'm intentional about being more. And I wasn't when I was working with my other clients. Not as much. I tried, but I think it was just being afraid of the being on the line. And like, okay, so what do we do now for 20 minutes when I have a 30-minute session? Do I sit here with this person? What are we going to do? So yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. It's like, is it the group of people that I'm with, or is it the fact that I'm a little more wise and knowledgeable further along? I don't know.
I think it could be a combination. Because I feel like when I was first starting, I was also like, I have to fill every single minute or else I'm not a good therapist. Like there have to be doing something at all times. So yeah, I feel like it might be a combination. Yeah. And then Grant, when you were talking about the diversity of communication, so I worked with predominantly verbal folks at my last couple of jobs. And so this job I have now, completely just everything so diverse. Like we have deaf people, we have blind people, we have folks that will verbalize, but like it's not always like complete sentences or complete words. And then completely diverse communication. Some use a board, some don't use a board. And it's been so interesting having to learn everyone and their styles of communication and their ways of being, and just figuring out how I can connect with this person. If it's at like verbally communicating or even just like sitting next to them while they're like looking through songs on an iPad or something. And I think often, honestly, there are times where I feel like we're on two separate lines, but we're like sitting right next to each other. And I feel like occasionally they'll connect and then sometimes they won't. But even if they don't, we're at least still like here, you know? Those are my thoughts on it.
There was a line when I was teaching dementia training to the staff at one of the facilities I worked at. It said, like, being here is often more important than what we are doing and working on. And we do work in I work in a community setting, so I'm working with the same clients because they live in the building, and so I get to see and really get to know my clients really well. And one thing that has like kind of come up as y'all have talked is the times that, because I knew my residents so well, or I thought I did, I made assumptions about whether or not they were going to participate in this activity, or offering them, a simplified version of what we're doing when they, really wanted the full version. They didn't want, that adaptation. And so there are times that I've made decisions for my resident assuming things, trying with good intention of trying, because I know them really well and I know how they typically act in a session. But then I may have like a practicum student or an intern go in and try something that, is more than I would have given them, and they engage with it and they have, a breakthrough, and then I feel, I've been keeping this from them. But, it's those times of like, when was I was looking for communication, or I felt like they were telling me one thing, but they're really trying to tell me something different. My focus was not on the right place, which is what I kind of pulled from that line in the song, of like, you would have called me, but I was on the other line. Like, where is your focus? And what are you paying attention to?
And I think you bring up a great point, because a lot of times we only know what we've experienced, what we're exposed to. And when you choose to work as a music therapist or choose to like pursue this, like that, you come to learn very quickly that is solely like your unique experience. Other people may have like similar things that like you can share and like relate to for sure, but people are also unique. And I think even with folks who communicate in similar ways, like even us four talking in a conversation right now, like post the interview, like we all, we're using the same type of communication style per se, but there's still nuance and uniqueness to how each of us communicates. And maybe like Allison's picking up on something that I'm doing that John missed, or like maybe John's aware of something that like Gabby's doing that like I'm not like picking up, like just based on like how we all know each other and how we all interact. And I think like to understand the importance of the unique ways in which we also communicate within those different channels, like even if like you're doing the same type of thing, you could still be on that other line and just like completely miss something. And I think it's just like really was very like appreciative of like having that moment of reflection. Like I wasn't anticipating to have like that to be my takeaway when I was listening to the song, but it was just a really, I think, again, where I'm at in life when I'm digesting the content, I'm trying to be more like intentional about like diversifying what I take in terms of like my media. And then also like this, it all kind of lined up perfectly to have this conversation the week that we're recording this podcast. So
it lined up on the line.
I think it's such a great conversation. And honestly, what you were just sharing made me think of one more thing. And it was how the way that we as clinicians may discuss our clients, especially if we are transitioning a caseload to another therapist, and share some things to quote unquote watch out for or be aware of about the person, and that might not necessarily be the case. I've had plenty of times where I've jotted down notes and then realized, oh, they don't do that with me, or, you know, there's a different way that they are interacting with me because I'm a totally different person, and they are communicating with me in the way that in the level that they feel trusting of me, and however else they feel about me, you know? So that's also something that I thought of as you were sharing that thought, Grant. So thank you for this discussion. I think it's so important.
It was a great question. Prompt.
Man. Well, is there anything you'd like to share, or like, is there anything you want people to look out for that's coming up in the future?
Gotcha. So I have an album coming out at the end of the year, hopefully, if, you know, the pandemic Lovato allows. It's called Holy Wars, and also have some new music coming out this coming month.
Awesome.
That's going to be announcing that really soon. So stay tuned.
Cool. Is there anywhere that if folks want to keep in touch with you and stay in contact with you, where can they reach you?
Gotcha. You can check out my website, iamlowmusic.com, or you can head over to social media and find me at iamlowmusic on any social media platform.
Great. Cool. Well, thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
Yeah,
So great to see you again.
Incredible conversation. Same to you.
Nice. Well, we're going to sign off by listening to Lost in Translation by Low.
Oh, that I meant it when I said it, how I was falling in love, counting those seconds till to you. Really thought that you were the one. What if it was different? What if I had stayed? What if I just came back? Would that be okay? You could love me, maybe in another life you would've called me, but I was on the other line. And do you miss me? Like I miss you all the time. Hold on to what we could be. Was it all just in my mind, in my mind? All that we had, I can't forget it. Been stuck on us. Go on, let me loose, give back my pieces. Give me back all my love. I don't know the difference, kinda like the pain. Love you in my misery, love you anyway. You could love me, maybe in another life you would've called me, but I was on the other line. And do you miss me? Like I miss you all the time. Hold on to what we could be. Was it all just in my mind, in my mind, in my mind? Maybe I'm broken, maybe it's just a phase. Maybe I'm hoping that you will feel the same way. Cards on the table, baby, let's run away, run away. yesterday. Maybe you were on time, but I was just too late. Now it's too